Good morning, everyone. Hope everybody's doing really well this Thursday morning. Got a leadership lesson for you this morning and a couple of announcements. Really looking forward to getting back to Rally. Hopefully we can all be back together pretty soon in the Rock Gym, starting our day together for morning rally. But until that time comes, we want to keep pressing forward with our quest to become great leaders. So I'm trying to offer another leadership lesson this morning. Before I get there, just a couple of announcements. I do want to remind everybody the best way that we can get back to being around each other, having field trips, traveling, having rally, those types of things, is to be sure that you're wearing face coverings on a regular basis. That is anytime that you are in the building, unless you are eating or drinking in the cafeteria or during lunchtime in your classroom. So please be sure that you're wearing your face coverings appropriately, all right? Hey, the quarter comes to a close very, very soon. Today is Thursday. The quarter will come to a close Friday. So you want to be sure that you are monitoring your grades, keeping up with all assignments, talking with teachers about anything that you may be missing. I want to be sure that our scholar grades look great. Athletes, you're reminded that eligibility is determined on first semester grades, and so that semester is also closing on Friday. So if you need to be passing all of your classes in order to continue moving forward with your athletic opportunities here at Allen J. Preps, just a couple reminders about those things. And they're talking about snow. Might get some snow over the weekend. We're already out of school Monday anyway for the Dr. King holiday. However, be sure you're taking your tablet home each and every day. We could get a blizzard, man. I heard 22 inches is possible. Not here. That's like up in Vermont. But anyway, be sure you're taking your tablet home each and every day. And again, B-Day. Enjoy your B-Day. All right, your leadership lesson is coming. It is on the concept of being a courageous leader. We said courage is all these things, including having the strength to follow your own conscience rather than the crowd. Here's our points as of Wednesday afternoon. Looks like Sabio House is having a pretty good week. Everybody else is right there in the mix. So continue thinking about how you can earn, and certainly don't lose, man. You lose points for silly things, right? Like coming to class late, not having your materials, being disrespectful to students or to staff. So as long as you're pursuing all those things that we teach, including integrity, service, and excellence, you're not going to have any problems with demerits, all right? But go ahead and look at your own live school points, determine how many dollars you're going to have to spend at the next Scholar Dollar event that is coming up in a couple of Fridays on the 28th, okay? So the series that we are in is entitled The Courageous Leader, and we're using Dr. King and a lot of stories associated with him to help us think about what courage looks like when it's connected to leadership. And so we've had a couple of lessons already this week, just quickly reminding each one of us, like Ruby Bridges, same time period as Dr. King, late 50s. We had the integration of schools. A lot of schools just refused to do it, even though it had already been passed by the Supreme Court that schools should be integrated, not segregated. And so in 1954, man, she was the only young lady 6 years old who was willing to go enroll in that elementary school. You know, he had marshals, U.S. Marshals, which are like really big time federal agents, escorting her in. She was 6, man. And these people, these adults were hurling insults at her at a 6-year-old. You know, we're talking about courage, but I just also wanted to be a reminder that, like Dr. King would tell us, be kind and be considerate towards other people. Now, between me and Mr. Blair, I hope you've had an opportunity to meet Mr. Blair, and Dr. Smith and Mr. Will and Counselor Barham, every day we are talking to scholars who, for whatever reason, have been unkind and inconsiderate towards other people. Man, it's a clear message. Dr. King is telling you, we are telling you, be kind and be considerate towards others. And then from the lesson from Ruby, we know be courageous too, man. Take action. There's going to be some more take action lessons coming from today. So then on Tuesday, we talked about the difference between this iguana and this brood of vipers, of these snakes, right? The iguana man knew what he needed to do, even though he had all these snakes like nipping at him, trying to wrap him up. So believe in yourself, know what's the right thing to do, and do it. That's what Dr. King's message was for that lesson. And then yesterday on Wednesday, we talked about family. We talked about why it's important to recognize that you don't just represent yourself, right? You're not just you represent your family, and your family has invested in you and taught you multiple lessons. And I talk to parents all the time. They're like, Doctor, we don't train our kids to be that way. We don't train our kids to be rude, disrespectful. We don't train our kids. I'm like, I get it, but they're not following what it is that you're training them to do. So remember that you represent your family. You see pictures here of Martin Luther King Sr., of his wife, and Martin Luther King Jr.'s mom, and then his 3 kids, along with his wife, Coretta Scott King. And you got to hear a little bit from them yesterday. So remember, guys, everywhere you go, you've got a name written across the back of your jersey. And that name represents your family. And so I always want my family to be seen in a positive light. And I know your family wants to be seen in the same way. So make good decisions. I'm going to send these out to our look block teachers. You guys might do some more discussion and writing about that today. And the last thing from yesterday's lesson is we said that Dr. King wants us to be a doer, just like he was a doer. And I thought, well, what's the opposite of a doer? So the opposite of a doer is a watcher. It's somebody who sees what's going on. They just kind of sit back and watch it. Like great example, like in the mornings when I come in, Coach Barker opens the gym for us at 7:30 in the morning. Some scholars start trickling in. I walk in 5 minutes after that, and we'll start straightening chairs. And it's so interesting to watch a lot of the scholars. They're just kind of sit there and they'll just watch us straighten chairs. I even had a scholar the other morning say, "What are you doing?" Like, we're straightening chairs because the chairs were all dysfunctional from study hall the day before. So Coach Barker and I are straightening chairs, but then a couple of scholars will start helping, right? They'll jump in and they'll start straightening chairs. They're doers. And then a couple other kids, man, they're just kicked back. They're like, watching endless YouTube videos or reels, whatever, doing absolutely nothing. And they're just watchers. So be a doer. All right. That was the lesson 2. And I'll send this out so teachers can spend some time discussing with you as well. Great story that we're telling today in connection with being a courageous leader. It's a story that you know. It's a story that is painted on our wall in Leadership Lane. But I want you to know the whole story of Rosa Parks. So during the same time period that Ruby Bridges was trying to enroll in school, the same time period that Dr. Martin Luther King was preaching at Ebenezer Baptist Church in Montgomery, Alabama, you had public buses, just like we have public buses here, and they had a law in place that said there was a section of the bus where colored people should sit, and there was a section of the bus where white people should sit. That was the law, if you could imagine. Well, in this particular case, Rosa Parks was sitting in the correct section. She was sitting in the section that was designated for the colored section. That's the language they used back in that time. However, she was asked to give up her seat on that particular day because a white person got on the bus and there was not a seat in the other section. What you may not know is that she wasn't the only person asked to give up her seat. 4 people were asked to give up their seat and they were sitting in the correct section. 3 of them did, and she didn't. And so we're going to talk about that some today. I want you to see that she was arrested. She was booked, meaning they took her into the police office. They took her fingerprints. They recorded her misdemeanor. And then she was fined a couple of days later when she went to court. They found her guilty of violating that law, and she was fined, okay? So the lesson that comes from that, and Dr. King would say this, you want to stand for what's right, even if you're the only one standing, okay? So in this particular situation, she was right. She was sitting in the right section. But because that bus driver asked her and several other people to give up their seats, some of them did, and she didn't. And some people might think it's because she was tired. She'd been working all day. Well, that stuff's true, but that's not why she didn't give up her seat. She was standing for what was right, even though she was the only person. Now, here's the connection, okay? So during this time, Dr. King was now preaching under his father at Ebenezer Baptist Church in Atlanta, Georgia. I told you about Ebenezer Baptist Church yesterday. So Dr. King, in this particular year, was preaching, and that was his job. And you know what? He had it pretty good because he was like not the first in command. He was under his dad. Everybody loved his dad. The church was flourishing. I mean, it was packed. I mean, Dr. King had it pretty good, right? So he could have just chilled right there, even though all this stuff was breaking off down in Montgomery, Alabama. He could have just been like, man, that's tough on Rosa Parks. Man, that's tough. They're having that problem down in Alabama. But that's not what he did. So he gave up his job as the associate pastor at Ebenezer Baptist Church and moved to Montgomery to help organize the Montgomery Bus Boycott. As a result of her being arrested and charged, they organized a boycott. This is an awesome story. It is a great part of the civil rights movement. In fact, it is the launching point of the civil rights movement in the United States of America. Rosa Parks refuses to give up her seat. She's charged, she's arrested, she's booked, and then she is fined or found guilty. And that very day, Dr. King and others came together in Montgomery and they said, okay, I see how you're playing. If that's the case, we are not going to use Montgomery city buses anymore. So why is that an issue for the city of Montgomery? Well, I mean, that was money, right? Every time you got on the bus, you had to pay a fee. And all those dollars are not going to be paid out. And in fact, they started organizing things like carpools. They started walking to work. They just refused. And that's going to go on for an entire year. So this is a monument that is right there on Cleveland Avenue that talks about Dr. King joining in with Rosa Parks and other members about overcoming this unjust policy in Montgomery. And they're going to end up being successful, but it's a great story, okay? So the lesson here is don't get too comfortable. Take risk to make a positive impact. Because Dr. King, I'm telling you, man, he was comfortable. He could have chilled out at Ebenezer Baptist Church. He probably could have preached there for the next 40 years, and everybody would have loved him. But he knew that he was being called to do something bigger and to have a positive impact. So that's the lesson for today. I want to let you see just a little bit of it on the way that the History Channel tells the story. It's a really cool story. Let's see if I can get it to play. Let's see if I can get it to play. Here we go.
Most of us know the inspiring story of Rosa Parks, the African-American civil rights activist who refused to give up her seat on a segregated bus in Montgomery, Alabama in 1955. The bus boycott spurred by Parks' arrest would help bring down the racist laws of the Jim Crow South and turn a young preacher named Martin Luther King Jr. into the country's best-known civil rights leader. But we bet you didn't know that the story behind the bus boycott isn't quite as simple as it might seem. To start with, Rosa Parks wasn't the first black woman to resist bus segregation in Montgomery. In fact, several different women had been arrested for the same offense in the last 12 months. One of them was 15-year-old Claudette Colvin. On March 2nd, 1955, she was riding the bus home from high school when the driver demanded she give up her seat for a white woman. After Colvin refused, police officers arrived on the scene and dragged her off the bus in handcuffs. Claudette Colvin would go on to become one of 4 black female plaintiffs in Browder versus Gale, the Supreme Court case that would effectively end bus segregation. As a longtime volunteer in the Montgomery chapter of the NAACP and secretary to its president, Rosa Parks advised and supported Colvin. She knew that local black leaders had been thinking about how to confront bus segregation in Montgomery for years before 1955. She also knew they were looking for a test case, an upstanding citizen they could rally the community around. But Parks certainly didn't plan on becoming that test case herself until December 1st, 1955. At the wheel of the Cleveland Avenue bus that day was James Blake, the very same driver who had ordered Parks off his bus after a confrontation 12 years earlier. Parks was sitting in the middle section of the bus when Blake told her and 3 other black riders to stand up so that one white man could sit. The 3 other black riders moved, but she refused. Some people have said Parks was simply too exhausted from working a long day to move to the back of the bus, but she said later she wasn't physically tired, just tired of giving in to Jim Crow. The real story behind the Montgomery bus boycott may not be as simple as the myth, but it is no less powerful. The courageous resistance of Rosa Parks, Claudette Colvin, and other ordinary women became the life force of the civil rights movement.
So I love that story. So Claudette Colvin was only 15 years old, and yet she also took some action. And she also was willing not to just be comfortable, but to take a risk. I mean, imagine that. She was like a high school sophomore, and she got dragged off that bus and put in handcuffs. So Rosa Parks is honored in a variety of ways. Again, she's in Leadership Lane. So please look at that picture when you walk by it today. It's got a picture of Rosa Parks standing, and very similar to the image that you see here on the right, but it also has a picture of the bus that says Cleveland Avenue behind it. It's a really great picture. And then, of course, Dr. King and all of his work, he's honored in a variety of ways, including in Leadership Lane. But I like this particular image of Dr. King. This is on the campus of High Point University. They have multiple leaders, both American citizens and worldwide leaders who have been inspirational in making change and have been courageous. And so really wanted to honor those 2 individuals again today. And want to highlight her quote once again. She says, "People always said I didn't give up my seat because I was tired, but that isn't true. I was not tired physically. The only tired I was was tired of giving in. So don't give in, man. I tell scholars all the time, there's going to be kids that don't make good decisions. There's going to be kids that don't do the right thing. Don't give in to that. You keep doing what you know is right. That, in the end, is what courageous leadership is all about. Here's the creed. You could pause it and someone can volunteer to share that today. I think it's important that we pay honor to our country each and every day. You know, it's a state law that schools in the elementary and middle school level will offer the Pledge of Allegiance each and every day, because our legislature knows it's important that we are unified as a country. I know some people don't participate in that, and that's certainly your decision, but I enjoy offering that every day. So I'm going to lead us in that. If you'd like to join me, please stand, and I will lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance today. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I like that term, indivisible. It means you can't break us up. No matter what COVID does, no matter what politics does, no matter what's going on in our country, you can't break us up, man. I want us to be united, certainly united here at Allen J. Prep and united elsewhere. Be courageous today. Be a great leader. Have a great day.